Hello and welcome back to Biker Stuff. Today I'm going to replace the front wheel bearings on my project bike, Piglet.
In every generation there is a chosen one. She alone will stand among the oily rags, the replacement parts and the used tyres. She is Biker Stuff.
Before I start, can I ask, if you haven't already, would you please subscribe, then ring my bell to get notifications when I upload more to YouTube. This is quite a simple job. I will show you two ways to do this. One way with the tools you'll find in your toolkit, and one with the specialist tools you can buy for it. I'm going to demonstrate this on a front wheel. The main difference between a front and a rear wheel is the number of bearings. The front has 2 and the rear has 3. You may find a circlip on the rear sprocket carrier, but you rarely find any on the front wheel. Firstly, prop your wheel up on a couple of chunky bits of wood like this. This is to prevent you from damaging the discs. Mind you, look at these, they are seriously in need of replacing, but that's for another day. Now, with a flat blade screwdriver, pry out the seal, but be careful as you can scrape the inside of the wheel. You may have one of these. It links into the speedo drive. Something that can be useful is a gas torch. You need to warm the metal around the bearing to allow it to pop out easier. Avoid damaging your paint. I will do this cold today. When it comes to removing the bearings, there is a choice of a flat blade screwdriver, a drift, or a bearing puller. I'll show you all of these. In the middle of the wheel between the bearings is a tube called a collar or a spacer. You will need to move this over to the side by levering against the bearing. There isn't much room to move it, but enough for your drift or screwdriver to make contact with the inner ring of the bearing. With a hammer, carefully tap the screwdriver or drift down onto the lower bearing. Then move it to the other side and continue. If you keep tapping on the same side, it can push the bearing out unevenly, which will stop it coming out smoothly. So do tap alternately on opposite sides until it drops out. It is also possible that you can crack the wheel if the bearing doesn't come out evenly. If you have a bearing puller, you need to find the biggest one that fits into the hole. If you put one in that is too small, it won't make good contact with the sides and will just pull out. Now, tighten it up fully until it grips the bearing. Attach the slide hammer and knock it up until it is out. Yes, I know, with one bearing out, I could just push this bearing from the other side, but then you would not have seen the bearing puller being used. Woo! Look inside where the bearing goes. This face is where the bearing mates when it is pushed fully home. This part here is the same size as the bearing, which is why it fits so tightly. With everything off the wheel, you need to clean the faces where the bearing sits and also the centre collar. The collar is there to join the inner rings of the two bearings together and allow the axle to slide through. Before we go any further, check the wheel for cracks. If you find one, you need a new wheel. If it gives up while you're riding, it is bye-bye time. Okay, with everything now clean, let's fit our new bearings and seals. You can use a bearing fitting kit like this, but you don't need one. You just need something the same size as the bearing. Oh look, the old bearing, that is the same size, and you don't need it after this. So it doesn't matter if you hit it with a hammer. Apply a thin film of grease on the wheel where the bearing will sit. This will help it slide in easier and hopefully to slide out again when you need to replace it sometime in the future. Align the new bearing over where it goes. Then sit the old bearing on top. Next, lightly tap until the bearing reaches its final destination. You'll know when it's reached the bottom because the tone will change from the hammer. It gives more of a ring instead of a thud. Flip the wheel over. Place the collar in. Make sure it sits squarely on top of the bearing you've just put in. I'll now show you the bearing fitting kit. Find the one that fits the inner ring, then the one that fits the outer ring. Screw this bolt through them both and into the handle. Lightly grease the wheel as we did before, then put the bearing in place. Get the bearing tool and begin tapping it down until you hear the tone change, as we did on the other side. All you have to do now is fit your new seals. Apply a thin film of rubber grease to the outside edge of the seal and evenly push it in. You shouldn't need any tools for this, just your thumbs. If you find this a bit much to do by hand, a piece of wood laid flat over the seal, tapped down with a hammer, will do it. Don't recess the seal, it is meant to fit flush. Do the same on the other side. Don't forget the Speedo ring if you have one. Apply a thin film of rubber grease to the inner edge of the seal when you refit the wheel, as it will rub against the alloy spacers that fit between the wheel and the forks. You should also apply a thin coat of grease to the axle when you refit the wheel so that you know it will come off when you next need it to. Thank you for watching. I know you liked it, so tell your friends, and I'll see you here next time on Biker Stuff.